A fallacy that the church tells people is people that leave the church are looking to sin. They're lazy. It's kind of like they just become bad people. And I think they have to give you that. Everything in Mormonism is so black and white, and so it's just black and white. It's so simplistic, which is ironic because we're taught that everybody's an individual. Everybody has different experiences. It's like the atonement. In the Mormon church, you're taught that the atonement is for every individual. And if you were to ask any active Mormon, well, why do people leave the church? Why do people leave the church? Especially if you were to ask like young people, they just wanted a reason to sin. And here's what I find funny. It shows the lack of empathy in the church. It shows the lack of just human knowledge. And, just a lack of how humans work and just, human psychology and how we think and our consciousness, because what they should be telling people is, well, why don't we ask them? Why don't we ask the people who have left, And I just think people would be surprised. And then it would take too much effort. It would take too much. That's one thing in Mormonism is nobody puts in a lot of effort to really learn things. Even their own religion, A lot of Mormons don't know a lot about their own religion, their own history, and think about that irony. Think about the irony of a church where the leadership tells people not to research their own history, their own church history. It makes sense that they're telling you, don't ask the people who leave what their reasons are, because you're asking them for their history. So that's really brilliant if you think about it. I mean, it really makes sense how if you cheat in one corner of your life, you automatically will have to cheat in another corner. So if you're going to cheat, if you're going to lie to the people, if you're going to bamboozle the people and say, don't read church history, there's nothing bad in church history, you don't need to read church history. And then, when people leave because of church history, because they find out that Brigham Young was abusive to women, that Joseph Smith was abusive to women, that you don't want that person, you don't want to talk to that person and find out why they left. It's so easy. It's so much easier just to say, well, that person is a sinner. And to just show no interest in why they've left. It's transition, we can change, we can, and here's something really interesting. I don't know how to phrase it, because my vocabulary is really poor. But when you have 1,000 10,000, 100,000 people that leave the church who were really active. If I was a leader of the church, I would say, hey, let's love them. It's okay that they left. They've given so much for the church. Like, think about it. There's members of the church that have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when they leave the church, you would think that the church would have the idea of like, hey, they've given hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't believe it now. They want their money back. We're not going to give them their money back, but the least we can do is be respectful towards them. Does that make sense? Somebody has given so much to an organization. They've given their life. They've given 2 years as a teenager. They literally would go think about it. As a missionary, you literally go anywhere in the world that they tell you to go. And you do whatever they tell you to do for 24 hours a day. You will go to sleep when they tell you to go to sleep. You will eat when you're told to eat. You will talk and say what you should say. It's complete programming. So if you reach a point where you feel like the church isn't true, or you feel like you should leave the church, that 10% of your income, the giving of your life, should matter. Your story matters. And the only way that the church can get it, so that your story doesn't matter, is one word: evil. You're just evil. You're evil now. Nothing you say matters. Your feelings don't matter. Who you are. You have nothing good to give to the world. Think about that. You used to matter. But you don't matter anymore. I find that to be very interesting. That it's not a family-centered or oriented church because of the concept of good and evil. Because of the concept of evil people. Because the concept of evil people is in the scriptures, and well, what happens? Well, God drowns them. The flood is really weird because there was like little children and teenagers too who were drowned, and it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like, were all of the teenagers evil? I mean, I'm talking like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, I don't know. So because of the concept of evil people and how they're wasteful and how they should be destroyed, and evil people shouldn't be listened to, you kind of have to dehumanize them. So when somebody leaves the church, it's like, oh, well, that person doesn't matter anymore. And I used to think that. I used to think, people, I used to think people who weren't members of the church couldn't be good. It's so weird. It's the Mormon way of thinking is so weird. It's like, and it's sad. It's like a sad way of thinking too. Looking back on it, it's like, I would have been a lot happier if I would have thought that there was good people in the world. If I would have thought, oh, there's loving, kind, good people in the world, that have value. But in the New Testament, you have Jesus coming and he shuts the door to people. You have Jesus coming and burning the wicked. And, you just got, evil people are wasteful and deserve to be wasted. And so you get this with Mormonism where it's like, well, it's kind of like this idea that if someone leaves the church, they don't have any value anymore. And their reasons for leaving the church are not valid. So, whatever you want to make of that. But if giving your money and giving 10% of your income, here's the way that the church could look at it. They could tell the members, they could say, a lot of people are leaving and they've given so much to this church. They get a paycheck, they pay 10%, Wednesday nights, they're helping out the youth. They were willing to work through things with difficult people, because there's always arguments and difficulties and young women's and young men's, and you would think that because these are loving men, men of Christ, that they would say there are valid reasons for leaving, but they never say that. Isn't that weird? What if your bishop raped you? What if your father abused you while you were growing up, and he was a Mormon? What if your bishop asked you sexually explicit questions? There's valid reasons for leaving. What if you read about Joseph Smith's polygamy and how he went about it, and that bothered you? It's a weird world we live in, and the fact that the leaders of the church. The fact that the leaders of the church can't say, well, there's valid reasons. It just takes a rational mind. You don't have to be a genius. I think when you say that there are no valid reasons, it proves how stupid you are. Like, you're just a really stupid person when you say there's no valid reasons for leaving the church. It's like, okay, so here's reasons why the Book of Mormon is fake. Here's reasons why Joseph Smith was a horrible person. And it's weird too, because a lot of people left the church during Joseph Smith's time. A lot of his close associates left the church. So there's reasons. I guess you could start with there's reasons, and then you could go to there's valid reasons or whatever, and it's like there's reasons and there are valid reasons. And the leaders of the church should, in their minds, come up with valid reasons. And the members of the church don't know. I think that's why they can get away with it. The leaders, the members of the church don't know the valid reasons. Does that make sense? So, the youth of the church don't know that there are valid reasons to not trust a bishop, to not trust Brigham Young, to not trust the story of Joseph Smith. They don't know that there are details missing in the history. They don't know that there are lies. They don't know about Joseph Smith coming to a 14-year-old girl and lying to her and saying, well, I had an angel come to me and say that I need to marry you. You know, it's like stuff like that. And it's like members of the church, especially the youth, they aren't getting the full story. They're not getting all of the details. And those who have lived for 20, 30, 40 years, they know this. We know this because when I was growing up, I never heard about Joseph Smith being married to a 14-year-old. So they were purposely hiding this fact. And why do I use the word purposely? Because it was part of history. Like, it was part of the reason that Joseph Smith was killed. Isn't that weird? Like, that was probably like the main reason he was killed, is because he was having sex with young women. Joseph Smith was friends with Richard Bennett, who had abortions. So Joseph Smith may have had abortions. Joseph Smith may have killed people. He may have hired people to kill people. He may have raped women. Maybe he didn't rape women, but he may have committed adultery. And adultery, meaning he may have had sex with other men's wives. And so we live in this crazy Mormon world where people don't know about the Book of Mormon being derived from the view of the Hebrews, and a lot of the ideas being from ideas that were already around. And when you realize that the story might be made up about finding gold plates in the hill, if you think about it, think about this. If there were plates buried that God was going to have dug up, would the guy who's going to bury them up or dig them up really be within like a mile from that place? I mean, I don't know how far away he was from that, but it was like a couple miles, right? Like as far as I know. That's kind of funny if you think about it. It's like, why not have it be 50 miles or 100 miles or 300 miles, you know? That actually kind of would make it more real, like more realistic. Like, well, Joseph, you're the prophet of the last dispensation, and we're going to have you go dig up these plates, but you got to go to Oklahoma, or you got to go to, or he would be like in a different state, you know, I got to go get him. But it just so happens that he literally was living within miles of the place. I don't know, it's just kind of funny. But as Mormons, we've been taught our whole lives that there's no way that somebody could make the Book of Mormon up. There's just no way the ideas about, you know, the tribe of Israel and all this stuff. And it's like, well, no, actually, there were already people with these ideas. There was already the late Napoleonic Wars. There was already the view of the Hebrews. There was already all of these ideas and then he inserted parts of the Bible into it, and then so it I still the Book of Mormon is still a good book in the sense of like be a good person, help the poor. So nobody disputes that, but there are some instances where Joseph may have taken advantage of the poor. A lot of it was like this group, and especially people in England. It was like, hey, come to America. Just coming to America. It seems pretty cool. But the whole Mormon idea is kind of interesting. It proves that people can leave family, people can leave spouse, for anything. You can get people to leave their spouse for an idea, to join a group. It's just you can get people to do anything. I mean, you can say, yeah, well, they really believed in God, and well, yeah, but anyway, I just the Mormon Church isn't really it's a really horrible place as far as seeing how they see others, how they see people who are other or outside, and how they treat people who people who are and it's just really weird.